GM CEO Fritz Henderson and his top brass mounting a full-scale campaign to reshape the automaker's image and persuade consumers to buy GM cars, barely 1 month after the company emerged from bankruptcy with the help of $50 billion in U.S. aid. The big question now is whether the new GM can make a profit and survive long-term. Our Greg Miles is here now with Jerry York, advisor to billionaire Kerkorian, to discuss that. Greg, all yours.
That's right. Jerry York is one of the savviest observers of the U.S. auto industry and corporate America. During the past 15 years, he helped Kerkorian invest in Chrysler, GM, and then Ford. He helped revive Chrysler and IBM in the 90s as CFO of both companies, and he sat on more than 10 corporate boards, including Apple, Chrysler, Tyco, and General Motors. In a speech in 2006, which I happened to attend, York correctly predicted that GM would run short of cash 3 years later, forcing it ultimately into Chapter 11. Jerry, welcome.
Thank you, Greg. Always good to be on with you.
Look, let's talk about this first. One thing that struck me in the past week is, General Motors filed documents saying that they may decide to do an IPO in July of 2010, about a year, after they emerged from bankruptcy, which was only a month ago. You've been making the argument that that just may be way, way too fast and not good for the company. Why?
Well, the issue is not whether or not it's good for the company. I think it's whether or not it's good for the owners of the company. For example, I have no idea what the enterprise value of GM will be a year from now, but for the government 61% of GM to be worth the $50 billion it paid for it between debt and equity, the company's got to have a market enterprise value up around $85 billion.
So what do you suggest that they would do then? Maybe wait 6 months, a year before doing something like this? Because apparently they only plan to potentially, sell a few shares or a small number of shares initially.
Yeah. Well, the main issue is fixing the company. And, private companies intend to go public, always like to get a little stock out there to measure value, but I just frankly don't see what it means at this point.
So what are we talking about then? They should maybe wait until 2 years, 3 years after, just to get everything inside GM that's got to get done?
Well, you can't really plan like that. It depends on market conditions and valuations, and it's something you sort of have to take a look at quarter by quarter.
Okay, now you've said that GM faces a number of major challenges in surviving long term, even though they've restructured in bankruptcy. What are those challenges? What's at the top of the list?
Well, to keep it simple, I think the situation that GM is in is more or less a horse race between the time it's going to take to rebuild the brands and increase consumer consideration for buying GM products on the one hand, and then on the other hand, the recovery of the economy in general and the automotive industry in particular.
Now, what's the challenge really of rebuilding the brands right now? Has bankruptcy done that much damage to them?
I don't think the issue is so much bankruptcy, but what has been done to the brands over the last 15 or 20 years. I mean, we all know from the market research and consumer surveys that the strength of the brands is just not where it needs to be.
Now, it struck me that the company has said that they hope that their market share will stabilize over the next few years at between 18.4% of the U.S. market to 18.9%. I cranked the numbers on their remaining 4 brands that they emerged when they came out of bankruptcy. The final 4 brands, they account for about 16.7% of the U.S. market thus far this year, which means they're way below. Why is that, and what challenge does that present?
Well, it's a definite challenge. They're going to lose some of that volume. On the other hand, having said that, the Chevrolet brand ought to be able to reconquest some of the volume that's going to be lost from closing down Pontiac and moving Saturn out of the GM fold. I mean, you talk to any Chevrolet dealer, he'll tell you that Saturn is a direct competitor of Chevrolet.
Now, I want to talk with you about some of the best-case scenarios, but what do you consider then when you put this all together? What are the odds, really, that GM can successfully revive itself?
Well, you know, that's a tough call, but I will, before I answer your question, I'm going to acknowledge up front that I'm extremely bearish on the state of the economy in this country, and I think that's GM's biggest obstacle. And given as bearish as I am on the economy, I'd call it something pretty close to 50-50. I think, unfortunately, as much as this country needs a better healthcare system, I think to, heap a healthcare system that reportedly is going to cost an incremental $1 trillion on top of the economy in the state that it's in now is just really troubling in my mind.
Jerry, let me clarify a point you made. You said they got a 50-50 odds of success, of arriving. Now, if they don't succeed, is that 50% downside? What does that mean? That they slip back into bankruptcy, which frequently occurs with companies that have been in bankruptcy once?
Well, you know, Greg, I haven't really given a lot of thought to that issue. I'm pulling for GM. You know, they got, from what I can see, great new leadership in Ed Whitaker at the board level. Fritz is clearly energized to do what has to do with GM. And
you're saying CEO Fritz Henderson? Okay.
Yeah, Fritz Henderson. I'm pulling for these guys.
One thing, of course, you're pointing out that they've dramatically reduced their labor costs, their total costs. They shut plants. And how much time does that buy them compared to the old GM?
Well, it just depends on the industry volumes. It's and you know, I mean, forecasting right now falls in the category of don't put 100 people to work on it because it'll be just wasting 98 people's time.
Now, we've got about 20 seconds to break, but Charles, if all goes well, can GM end up being a vibrant company? Give me about 15 seconds, then we'll come back to you after a break.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, I think they've got to, maybe the best way to think about this is 8 out of 10 big decisions have got to be great decisions. They can't make too many bad decisions here.
Okay, Jerry, we're going to take a break, pay the bills, and then we'll come back in a few minutes. There you have it. Jerry York, the advisor to Kerkorian, who invested in all 3 of the major auto companies over the past 15 years. Jerry York, of course, the man who only 3 years ago forecasted almost to the month the time when General Motors would run short of cash and ultimately have to file for bankruptcy. He did that 3 years ago. Now he's on the boards of Tyco, a number of other U.S. companies.